He's never.
Del otro, ¿verdad? Pero no sé dónde está, aunque esto es.
Request that everyone keep their arms and legs inside the cars at all times for your safety, as we'll be traveling some pretty busy streets. All aboard. Just ahead of us is the former Buccaneer Hotel, which up until 1962 was a big resort hotel owned by the Moody's. They gave the building to the Methodist Church, and it is being operated now as the Moody House, a Methodist retirement community for people 62 years of age and older. Up to the left is the old Galveston Pleasure Pier. The Pleasure Pier was completed in 1945 at a cost of over $1 million. The pier was built originally with revenue bonds, which were to be paid off entirely out of the revenue derived from the pier itself. There was an exhibition hall and an open-air stadium out there, and he had fishing pier and several other buildings used for miscellaneous purposes, and they tried a little bit of everything over the years, trying to find something to make the pier pay for itself, but it never did. About 1963, the pier was completely refinanced, and then a 40-year lease to the Flagship Hotel. They have over a $4 million investment out there. It's actually owned by the city of Galveston, and the Flagship pays the city a certain amount annually, and that pays off the bonds against both the hotel and the pier. Galveston from 1836 to 1845. The larger memorial on our right in the center of the park is in honor of the men from Galveston who lost their lives during World War I in 1917 and 18. The bandstand is used for concerts, and the park is fully furnished with game equipment, tennis courts, and tables available for picnics. Just ahead of the train on the left-hand side is one of 5 free Galveston County fishing piers. Many species of fish are caught from those rock drawings both during the daytime and evening hours. All varieties are not caught at the same time of the year. Different varieties come in the fall and winter months and the spring and summer. The temperature of the water varies about 30 degrees from winter to summer, from the mid-50s in the winter to the mid-80s in the summer. As we go by the small triangle of ground coming up on the right side of the train, we want to call your attention to the all-cement drinking fountain there in the center of as we proceed down Seawall Boulevard, we'll tell you a little bit about Galveston today. Galveston is a city of 65,000 population and is located on the eastern end of Galveston Island. The island itself is about 32 miles long by about 2 miles wide at the widest point. The economy of the city of Galveston is affected mainly by the Galveston wharves, the University of Texas Medical Branch, those are the largest employers in the city, and by the tourist and convention business that reaches its peak here during the months of June, July, and August. And this is also the home of the city of the American National Insurance Company, also employing about 1,000 people in Galveston. The seawall itself, just along the left of the train, is 10.5 miles long and extends ahead of us about 6 more miles. Down the island, beyond the end of the seawall, there's several housing developments, most of these being weekend homes and summer homes for people who live in Houston. There's getting to be quite a number of permanent residents in that area as well. Those houses are built up on piling above the level of the island so that in cases of high tide caused by hurricane winds and waters, as the water rolls under the buildings and won't wash them off their foundations. In 1961, when Hurricane Carly hit the island, and in 1983, when Hurricane Alicia came through, tides rose 8 to 10 feet above normal in this area. Restaurant and hotel here owned by Guidos on the right. We want to call your attention to the giant crab on the platform. That crab is just a little bit larger than those usually caught here in our local waters. But you'd have a hard time convincing most Gulf Coast Texans that it is. We're just starting now through the area that was formerly occupied by Fort Crockett. Fort Crockett was named after Davy Crockett, hero of the Texas Revolution, who died at the Alamo. Construction of the fort was started in 1897, and it was first garrisoned in 1899. The property has all been sold to private interests now and is being developed as commercial establishments and home sites. But some of the gunmouths can still be seen along Seawall Boulevard. These buildings we're approaching on the right were part of Fort Crockett. They're used today by various government agencies as homes for their personnel. Most of those homes are occupied by Coast Guard personnel. The heavy rock drawings you see running out into the Gulf on our left were put there many years ago as wooden drawings for the protection of the base of the seawall. The action of winds and tides along those drawings causes sand to build up around the base of the seawall, and that in turn keeps the soil under the wall from washing away. We have some very strong tides along those drawings, and no one is allowed to swim or surf within 100 feet of the drawings. The drawings were not built to be fishing piers, but after they were covered with those big, heavy granite blocks, they did turn out to be the best fishing piers around. Counting 9 of those, there are actually 14 free fishing piers along the beachfront. There are also 3 other fishing piers that charge to fish, but they get people a little further out into the Gulf, into deeper waters, and they also have everything needed to fish right there on the pier. guns and 12-inch mortars. Those guns were fired quite often, just keeping in practice, firing at floating targets about 5 miles out in the Gulf. However, they were never fired at an enemy ship. This fort was built during the Spanish-American War and was used through the end of World War II. Property on the left of the train, with the exception of the Spanish-type home here on the corner, is one of the newer residential sections of Galveston Island. All of the homes in this area coming up on our left were built since 1961. Those homes range in price of about $75,000 and up. That was also part of the Fort Crockett property. They had a German cruiser of war camp in that area during World War II, by the way. We'll mention the Moody name quite a number of times on this trip. A little later we'll tell you a little bit about the Moody family and the Moody Foundation. This building coming up on our right now is the EC Northern Memorial Scout Service Center. It was built and equipped with funds provided by Mrs. Mary Moody Northern.
Over on the right side of the train and also the left, these green bushes with the multicolored flowers on them, they're called oleanders. In a couple minutes we'll be telling you a story about the oleanders and how they come to Galveston.
Just ahead of the train on the left side is the Moody Memorial First United Methodist Church. That building was completed in 1963 at a cost of about $2.5 million. All of the funds to build and equip that church were provided for in the will of Mrs. Libby Sharon Moody, wife of W.L. Moody, Jr. Still has several beautiful homes located in various parts of Galveston, some of which we will point out to you on the tour. This big home coming up on our left just across the intersection, pretty well hidden behind a brick fence, as well as some trees and shrubbery, was one of the Moody homes. It was built by W.L. Moody III. That home has been sold now and is owned by one of the doctors at the medical branch.
There actually is a home there. You can see it over the top of the fence there, in between the trees and the bushes. And also, after we make our left-hand turn, you'll look up through the top of the trees. You can see the top of the roof and a chimney. I think they like their seclusion a little bit.
We're just starting through one of the beautiful residential sections of Galveston. Galveston is also known, by the way, as the Oleander City. While we go through this area and you look at the homes and gardens, we'll tell you how Galveston got that distinction. The first oleanders, which were an old world product, were brought to Galveston Island in 1841 off a trading schooner Joseph Osterman. Several varieties of pink and white flowers were included, and all of those first trees were imported from Jamaica. Mrs. Isadora Dreyer, Mr. Osterman's sister, planted the trees in her garden and along the edge of the street outside her fence. She gave the cuttings and shoots to her many friends and neighbors, and as the island's soil and climate were so well suited to their growth, soon oleanders were blooming on every street in Galveston. As Galveston grew in size, so did the number of oleanders, and even today we have them on every street. There now being about 60 different varieties and colors. The location of those first oleanders can still be found by a little marker in front of the gas company building downtown. The inscription on the marker states that those trees were the original oleanders brought here in 1841. They tell a simple old legend about the origin of the oleander. In a humble home in Spain, the story goes, a young and lovely girl lay ill with fever. Despite the frantic efforts of the mother to cure the child, by doing all that her slender means permitted, the child grew worse. Finally, reduced to illness herself by her unavailing efforts, the mother fell to her knees and prayed to St. Joseph to spare her child. When she arose, the room was filled with a rosy light, which seemed to come from a figure bent over the child, a strange man of noble aspects. He placed on her breast a branch of oleander, covered with pink, unfading flowers, freshly plucked from paradise. The rosy light faded, and the mother turned to thank the stranger for the gift, but she was alone with her daughter, who was sound asleep the first time since the illness began. Again, the mother fell to her knees, this time to give thanks. And since that day, the oleander has also been known as the flower of St. Joseph. These oleanders usually start blooming in Galveston in early April, and they're always at their prettiest. Just one solid mass of flowers all over Galveston from early May to early July. We'll be traveling several blocks straight ahead through an area where there isn't very much of importance to point out to you. So as we continue through the area, we'll tell you just a little of the early history of Galveston. Galveston is one of the oldest cities in Texas, and while serving under 6 flags, her citizens have enriched the pages of Texas history. Cabeza de Vaca, the first white man to set foot on Texas soil, was shipwrecked on Galveston Island in 1528. LaSalle discovered the island in 1686, and he named the island St. Louis in honor of his French sovereign. But the island remained unoccupied except by roving bands of Indians known as Caracoas until early in the 18th century, when all of Mexico, Texas included, passed into the possession of Spain. In 1777, the island was occupied temporarily by the troops of Count Bernardo de Galvez, Governor General of the Spanish possessions in America. In honor of this Spanish nobleman, the island was given the name Galvez, but that was changed in later years to Galvez Town, Galveston. Jean Lafitte, the notorious pirate, claimed Galveston for his headquarters in 1817, and he made the island a rendezvous for his ships and men. Until his depredations on the Spanish Main embarrassed the government of the United States so much that he was prevailed upon in 1821 to move his base to a point further southward. No sooner had the ships of Lafitte cleared the harbor than American pioneers began to arrive, and by 1830, a fair-sized settlement had been established in Galveston. The city of Galveston was founded in 1839 by Colonel Michael B. Menard, a Canadian who came south at the age of 25 to seek a fortune. Menard exerted a strange power over the Indian tribes, and by bringing his influence to bear during the Texas War of Independence for Mexico, he was able to aid the Texas armies in many instances. At the conclusion of the war in 1836, Menard purchased from the new Republic of Texas 1 league of land comprising the eastern end of Galveston Island. That was about 3 miles, and the purchase price was $50,000. Menard then organized the Galveston City Company, which plotted the town site, laid out the streets, and set aside suitable sites for schools, hospitals, parks, and public buildings. Menard was a civil engineer by trade, and Galveston's wide, straight streets show unmistakable evidence of his skill and vision. During the Civil War, Galveston was one of the most important cities in Texas, and the port through which supplies were landed for Confederate forces. A federal fleet captured the island early in the war, but it was retaken 3 months later by the Confederates. A building near the waterfront still shows the scars of cannonballs fired by federal gunboats during several land and harbor engagements. Somewhat later in the trip, we'll point out that old building. We'll also show you an old home that was hit many times by gunfire during the Battle for Galveston.
I don't know about that.
side of the train is the former location of the United States Public Health Service Hospital. It was formerly known as the Marine Hospital. These buildings were all constructed in 1931 at a cost of $60,000. The area is now used as an apartment complex, and several new buildings have been developed on the property. Quite a number of Galveston streets are lettered a little bit unusually. If you haven't already noticed some of the markers, there'll be one on the next door that marks M and a half. Every other avenue between M and the Gulf has the 1/2 on the end of the street letter. In the early days of the city, when the streets were laid out and lettered by Mr. Menard, the section of the city from Avenue A, which is on the bayfront, over as far as Avenue M, were laid out in regular city-sized blocks, just like it is today. While the other half of the city, from Avenue M to the Gulf, was originally laid out in what they called outblocks. Those outblocks being 4 times the size of the others. That was done for the benefit of the truck farmers, dairymen, poultry raisers, and others who were living in the area at the time. Later on, as the population of the city increased, in an effort to sell some of their property, the owners found it necessary to subdivide those big blocks, cutting through all the new streets. The only way they could letter the new streets was to add the 1/2 to the previous street letter. All the streets had been previously lettered alphabetically all the way to the Gulf, but they disregarded the fact that the half blocks were twice as long as the others. This is the Ball High School on our left. This building replaced the old Ball High School that served Galveston from 1885 to 1954. The old school was located in what is now part of the business section downtown and was replaced there by an office building. Ball High School has an average enrollment this year of about 3,000 students. This is the only public high school in Galveston. There is one other high school, O'Connell High School, operated by the Catholic Church, and they average around 700 students. Travelers to Galveston found their trip very hard and tiring. There were different fares in Texas in those early days based on the weather. 10 cents a mile was the usual rate charged in dry weather. But if it rained, first-class passengers paid a flood rate of 15 to 20 cents a mile. All second-class passengers were required to get out and help free the coaches from the mud when it bogged down, while the first-class passengers could just get out and walk. Of course, everyone that rides with us rides first class, so the worst you have to worry about is having to walk. Galveston today is served by the most modern means of transportation, 4 major services: air, water, rail, and highway. In addition to the double causeways that lead out toward Houston on Highway 45, the eastern end of the island is served by the Texas Highway Department's free ferries that operate on Highway 87, leading toward Beaumont and Port Arthur. The western end of the island was deadlocked for many years. In the early days of the city, they ran a ferry across San Luis Pass that carried state coaches across there, but they did away with the ferry many years ago. In 1966, we opened the modern $3.5 billion bridge across San Luis Pass that now gives the island a bridge connection to the Texas mainland to the Freeport area. We're getting pretty well into the older part of the city now, and on the right side, just a little further ahead, where there's a white picket fence, we'll pass the 1839 Williams home, which is considered one of Galveston's most historic homes. The home was built by Samuel May Williams, and was probably one of the first prefabricated houses in the country. This house was framed in Maine and brought to Galveston on a sailing schooner and erected just to the right of us on 7-foot pilings. After serving as the Williams home for 18 years, it was purchased by Philip C. Tucker, and for more than 90 years was the Tucker home. The home is owned today by the Galveston Historical Foundation. There is an old brick kitchen that's part of the house. It's partially buried today due to the fact this entire section of the city has been raised in elevation several feet since that house was built. And for some reason, they were unable to elevate the brick part of the house. There have been other much larger brick buildings elevated over the years, and we'll point out a good example of that later in the trip. Samuel May Williams, the man that built the house, was also one of the founding fathers of Galveston and is considered the father of the Texas Navy. Williams contributed $150,000, or about 10% of the total cost of the Texas Revolution, out of his personal fortune. The home is open now for public tours by the Galveston Historical Foundation. The big home coming up on our right on the next corner is known as the Powhatan House. This famous colonial home was built in 1847, but was later moved to this site of land, which was once owned by Gail Borden. The house itself is about 1/3 of the old Powhatan Hotel, which was one of the city's first family hotels. But it was a failure because it was too far from town then. The hotel was used later as a boys' military academy, an orphan's home, a social center, and finally divided into 3 parts and made into 3 homes. This one was used as a private home for many years, but is now owned by the Galveston Garden Club. It is now used as the Garden Club Center. This home is also open to the public. It was on the property that the Powhatan House now stands that Gail Borden invented the process for condensing milk. The great Borden Company of today derives its name from Gail Borden, the founder of that company.
Oh, you'll watch the bushes there on the right. We'll clear them, okay? We make a little slap there with a leaf or two.
We're starting along the side of another historical home, which is known as the Oaks. It will be coming up on our right. This home was built in 1838 by one of the Allen brothers, who later founded the city of Houston. In 1843, it became the home of Michael B. Menard, founder of Galveston. It is referred to now as the Menard home. This home is Greek Revival in architecture, and most of the material for it was brought here from Maine on sailing schooners. They say the first Mardi Gras ball to be held in Texas was held in this home, and various statesmen of the Republic and of Texas have visited here. General Sam Houston is said to have visited this home. Menard was also a trader with the Shawnee Indians, and they visited him sleeping in the yard under the trees. This Menard home and the Williams Tucker home we pointed out a few blocks back are the 2 oldest existing homes in Galveston. This is Central Methodist Church on our right now. This church was founded in 1888, but the buildings for the church were built between 1914 and 1957. this area we're going through now were probably built after the turn of the century, due to the fact that this entire section of the city was pretty badly devastated by the 1900 hurricane. This section was only a few feet above sea level at the time of the 1900 storm. The highest point on the island at that time was 8 feet above sea level, and that was in the area where the Bishop's Palace is now. The highest point on the island now is listed as being 17 feet above sea level, which would be anywhere along the seawall. That's the height of the seawall. The property then tapers off to about 4 feet above sea level over on the bay side. The bay side is still subject to some flooding in case of extremely high tides caused by hurricane winds. Coming up on our left, just across the next intersection where there is a big cream brick home today, is the former location of the old Ballinger home, where Miss Betty Ballinger and Mrs. Kelly Bryan Terry formed the organization known as the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. Membership in that organization is comprised of women whose forebears fought for the Republic, and it is statewide. This big home here on the right of us, pretty well hidden behind the trees and shrubbery, is the old Hutchings house. It was built in 1859. This house was built of red brick, but after the great 1900 hurricane, the porous brick needed repointing. So at that time, the house was covered with stucco. That home has been in the Hutchings family now for well over 100 years. The Hutchings family themselves have been active in the banking business in Galveston since 1854. They were co-founders of the old Ball Hutchings Bank, now First Republic Bank, and they're still involved in local business and civic affairs. Park coming up on our right is known today as Kempner Park. This is the former Garden Marine Social Club of early German settlers, and for many years was the most active social gathering spot in Galveston. The park was designed originally after a German beer garden. In 1925, after attendance at social affairs had fallen off, the property was purchased by Stanley Kempner, and he donated the property to the city as a public park. Public School Stadium on our left. When they were building the stadium, there were quite a number of famous Galveston names suggested for it, but rather than hurt anybody's feelings, they never gave it a proper name. It's just Public School Stadium. The building on the right of the train was the Black Branch of the Rosenberg Library, which was one of Henry Rosenberg's many gifts to Galveston. It is also referred to as Old Central, as it housed the original Black High School. Church coming up on our right, just across the intersection, is the Avenue L Baptist Church. It's a Black Baptist church, one of the oldest in Galveston. The brick section of that church was built in 1902, but the older wooden part in back of it was built out of the remains of a wooden church that stood on that site for many years. The wooden church was destroyed there by the 1900 hurricane. We said earlier we'd tell you a little bit about the Moody family and the Moody Foundation. W.L. Moody came to Galveston in 1886, going first into the cotton business. A short time later, he opened the W.L. Moody & Company Bank, the family-owned bank. From there, the family branched to various business interests, including hotels, banking, printing and publishing, cotton factory, life insurance, and they own a number of cattle ranches throughout Texas. W.L. Moody Jr., during his lifetime, formed the Moody Foundation, which today controls a large portion of the Moody fortune. In addition to the Methodist Church, the Boy Scout building we've already pointed out, the Moody family and the foundation have made numerous gifts throughout Texas, as well as others here in Galveston that we'll point out to you later in the trip. The big red brick home coming up on our left across Broadway is the old W.L. Moody Jr. home. That home was built in 1894 and contains 30 rooms, plus an above-the-ground basement. It's probably one of the finest houses in Texas to be built on a steel frame. Mrs. Bell Moody Norton, the daughter of Mr. W.L. Moody Jr., lived in this home until her death. The big monument coming up on our left in the center of the next intersection is the Texas Heroes Monument. This monument was erected in 1900 at a cost of $50,000. It's another of Henry Rosenberg's many gifts to Galveston. The monument is 72 feet tall, 34 feet square at the base, and is topped by a statue of Victory, 22 feet high. The story of Texas' struggle for independence from Mexico is told by means of the bronze panel and figures around the granite base. The big brick home on our left across Broadway is the old George Seeley residence. This is a French Renaissance mansion constructed of narrow brick imported from Belgium and was built in 1889. The hospitality of a Seeley home was extended to countless famous people. Included among them were Clara Barton of Red Cross fame and President Benjamin Harrison. Some of the greatest railroad transactions of the Southwest took place in that home, known as Open Gates. The big red brick home just to the left across Broadway is probably one of the oldest brick homes in Texas. That home was built in 1859 by James Monroe Brown, a hardware merchant, and is known as Ashton Villa. Both the Confederate and Federal generals used this home as their headquarters during the Civil War. This home has now been restored by the Galveston Historical Foundation, and it too is open to the public for tours. This is the World War II Memorial on our left in the Parkway. It was erected by the people of Galveston County to honor the county war dead, both of World War II and the Korean conflict. Church we're approaching on our right now is the Reedy Chapel of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. The chapel was built in 1886. It replaces a previous church on the same site. The original church on that site had been built in 1851 by a group of white Methodists and was used originally as a meeting place and a place of worship for their slaves prior to the Civil War. The original building burned in the great 1885 fire. We'll tell you more about later. Of quite a number of the homes of Galveston's early wealth. It seems like Galveston may have had a little more than its share in those early days. It seems, too, that the size of a man's house added somewhat to his stature, so they all built houses just as big as they could. There are quite a number of the old mansions still along Broadway, though some have been demolished in recent years to make way for commercial property. The big mansion and to our left, just across Broadway, is the old Kempner home, owned by the same family we mentioned as giving the park to the city. The Kempners also started out in the cotton business in the early days, and they branched out into various business interests throughout the Southwest. Imperial Sugar Company in Sugarland is one of the big Kempner interests today. They still have both cotton and sugar interests in Galveston. You probably have noticed a wide variety of palm trees around Galveston. None of the palm trees are actually native to the island. They've all been imported from down in the south of Texas, where they do grow native. Most of the other trees along Broadway are live oaks. Coming up on our left across Broadway is probably the most lavish home ever built in Galveston. This home is referred to now as the Bishop's Palace. We'll circle the block just ahead and come back across Broadway on this corner and pass right alongside of the Bishop's Palace. As we go around the block, we'll be telling you a little bit about that building. In the meantime, the pretty church on the left across Broadway is the Sacred Heart Catholic Church. That building was built in 1904 and is of Moorish Indian design. That building replaces a previous church on that site that was destroyed by the 1900 hurricane. The statue way up on the highest part of the church is a copy of the Christ of Endy statue. The Bishop's Palace was built by Colonel Walter Gresham, a pioneer Galvestonian, between 1886 and 1891, and it was used for many years as his personal residence. In 1943, the building was purchased by the Catholic Church and was presented to the late Reverend Christopher Byrne, who was then Bishop of Galveston, and the building became known thereafter as the Bishop's Palace or the Bishop's Castle. It was said to have cost $250,000 when it was built that many years ago. If the same lavish materials were used today, the cost would probably be prohibitive. One of the mantels in the palace is made of onyx, and during the New Orleans Exposition of 1886 was a first prize winner. That mantel is trimmed in solid silver and is valued at more than $10,000. The walls of the ballroom in the castle are covered with silk tapestry, and after it was acquired by the bishop, much of the tapestry was restored. The first floor walls and ceiling of the building have murals painted by Mrs. Gresham, who was an artist in her own right. Most all of the woodwork, including the grand staircase, were fabricated in Cincinnati of many rare woods and were then hand-carved on the site. From a point of construction, the building is said to be one of the sturdiest on the island. It's built of red sandstone, white limestone, and native Texas granite, all cut and shaped on the premises. It took nearly 7 years to build this home. Upon the death of the bishop in 1950, the building went back to the church. It was used then for several years as the home for some of the priests. The building has more recently been turned over to the Newman Club, associated with the Catholic Church. They use the basement, which in this case is on the ground floor, as their club room, and the next 2 floors are open to the public for tours. The home is said to be one of the 100 most outstanding structures in the entire United States. Colonel Gresham, the man who built the house, was a lawyer by profession, as well as a politician. He was in the Texas legislature first, but later was a representative in Congress in Washington. He was very instrumental in the building of a deep-water harbor that serves Galveston today. Homes had rainwater cisterns of one type or another. That was the main method of pumping water. Wells were used on the island with some success. There were 5 wells at one period located along Winning Avenue G, sort of the city, as its main water supply, but around 18 turned salty, and they had to be discarded, except for fighting fires. The present water supply of Galveston comes from 15 wells located on the mainland in the Sonoma area and from the city of Houston and its Lake Houston water supply. You probably noticed in the old parts of the city that many of the homes are built very high above street level. Most of those are carryovers from the early days when the city was always subject to some flooding. Even today, if we were to get another storm as severe as Carla or Alicia, this section through here and on over to the bay would be underwater again. There's about 3 feet of water downtown in the business area during the recent hurricanes. That water comes in mainly from the bay and the bayou along the north side of the city where there's no... This home coming up on our left across the intersection was built in 1886 by a German immigrant by the name of Gus Reimerthofer. He and his brother operated the Texas Star flour mill for many years here and both made a fortune in the flour business. We've been asked a number of times about the blinds of all of those big homes. They put the blinds up there originally for hurricane protection, and they're kept up there for that purpose. We mentioned a couple of things already that Henry Rosenberg gave to Galveston. Rosenberg was known and respected by Galvestonians of that day as our benefactor due to the fact that during his lifetime and by his will, Rosenberg gave more than $1 million to the city for public purposes. Big Henry Rosenberg home, built in 1859. It originally had 4 chimneys and a centrally enclosed glass captain's cupola, characteristic of seaport towns of that day. Rosenberg came to Galveston at the age of 18 as an immigrant from Switzerland, going to work first as a clerk in a dry goods store. About 3 years later, though, he bought the business and from there was on his way to becoming another of Galveston's millionaire philanthropists. Homes in this old area are being restored to their original condition. Restoring these old homes instead of modernizing or tearing them down has gained wide popularity in recent years and has been recognized nationwide. The first home on our right as we cross the intersection is known as the Austin House. It was built in 1870 and owes its charm chiefly to the fact that it is a typical plantation home built in city surroundings. That was the home built by cousin of Stephen F. Austin. Instead, that home was built in 1859. It was hit many times by gunfire during the Battle for Galveston, which was fought on New Year's Day in 1863. Requests had been taken care of as provided by his will. The balance remaining in Rosenberg's estate, about $400,000, was earmarked for that building and maintaining of a free public library for the people of Galveston. Constructed just to the right of us in 1902, it's still one of Texas' most complete libraries. The bronze statue of Mr. Rosenberg was put there in 1906 by the people of Galveston to honor him. The First Baptist Church here on the left is another more modern sanctuary today. They built this building in 1957, right on the site of the old John Seeley home. It is another of one of the older structures in the city, though. They originally had their building on the vacant corner coming up on our left. Their building was completely destroyed by the 1900 storm, and then they rebuilt it again on the same corner in 1902. They finally outgrew that building and had it demolished in 1962. The white building coming up on our right as we make our turn is the former Jewish temple. That building was built in 1870 and is the second oldest Jewish temple in Texas. It was built to withstand both hurricane winds and waters and has never had any real problems with those storms except high water. It is used today as part of the Masonic temple. The building coming up on our left just across the intersection is Eaton Memorial Chapel at Trinity Episcopal Church. The chapel was built in 1882, and it honors the Reverend Eaton, who served the church for many years. Trinity Church was founded in 1841, and their main sanctuary, coming up on our left, was built in 1857. It's a beautiful specimen of cathedral architecture. In 1925, the Trinity building was elevated 4.5 feet with jacks and filled underneath. That was considered a major engineering feat at that time. There have been other large buildings elevated over the years, but most of that took place just after they built the first section of the seawall.
Over on the right side of the train, if you look at those signs that are painted on the wall of that building, they were both originally painted around 1905. And just about 2 years ago, they restored the Coca-Cola sign back to its original colors. That's also the original outdoor design for Coca-Cola. And it's probably the original price, too.
Most of the buildings in this old part of the city were built in such a way that the bottom floor of the building originally stood 3 to 4 feet above the level of the streets. They did that because the area was subject to flooding. During the great elevation of the city, which took place just after the first section of the seawall was built, was elevated about 3 feet back off the streets, up pretty much to the bottom floors of most of the buildings. Ahead of us for several blocks now is some of the older business section of the city. These buildings in the area date back into the early 1850s, and most of them were built right before the turn of the century. Coming up on our right just across the alley is known as the Trueheart Adrian's building, built in 1882. That building housed one of the first real estate firms in Texas and is now owned by the Junior League of Galveston. The building on the corner to the right of us now is the old First National Bank building, built in 1877. That bank was founded in Galveston in 1865, and it was the first national bank in Texas. It now houses the Art Center Gallery and Shop. To your left, at the end of the Strand, the large white Art Deco building is the home of the Center for Transportation and Commerce, an exciting 5-acre, $7 million railroad museum, open every day, 10 till 5. We've just turned onto the Strand, that fabulous thoroughfare of the early 80s and 90s. In the early days of the city, this street was internationally known. This was the center of the wholesale business of Texas, as well as the center of banking activities. This was Galveston in its era of phenomenal growth, when it was the metropolis of Texas. It was on the Strand that hundreds of thousands of dollars changed hands daily as wholesalers supplied the great part of the Southwest with goods of every description. The Galveston Historical Foundation and other organizations are now working to bring this street back to its former prominence in Galveston.
Across Industrial Boulevard and into the waterfront area here in Galveston. If you look to your left, you'll see the mast of the sailing ship, the Elisa. And also in Pier 22, you'll see the Texas Seaport Museum. Both are open daily for tours. Straight ahead, you see Willie G's Restaurant. If you look at the front there, you see a theater with a marquee and the movie The Great Storm. This is a movie that was produced about the 1900 hurricane that destroyed Galveston Island, and it plays all day long. Also, you see the Harbor House Hotel there on your right, with the shops at Pier 21. We'll be stopping at the Harbor House Hotel for just a few minutes.
so if you do decide to get off here, then make sure you're back here by 6:40, or else you have to find your own way back. Now, the ones that want to continue on with this tour, you better hang here real close, because I'm just going to be here about a minute, and then I'm going to be taking off again, just long enough for people to get on or get off, and then
I'm telling you.